Look, Mr. Bubbles, it's an angel. I can see light coming from his belly. Wait a minute, he's still breathing. It's alright. I know he'll be an angel soon.
Ever heard of BioShock? Yeah, of course you have. Now, have you ever heard of the System Shock series? No? Well, you might have heard of its sequel, System Shock 2, but never even bothered to look at it or the first one. Both of them were made by some of the same developers as BioShock. Hell, BioShock and the original Deus Ex were spiritual successors to the System Shock games. However, we're not going to be looking at System Shock 2 in this video, we're going to look at the original game that started the entire Shock series. It makes me kinda sad that this hidden gem of a game is often overlooked, but there's some understandable reasons as to why it is. While it is pretty unknown by a lot of people, it's said to be one of the first games that hybrided first-person shooters and role-playing games, being one of the major breakthroughs of the genre. It sold over 170,000 copies, being praised by critics and on several Hall of Fame lists. While that might not be a lot, that's still a pretty well-selling game for back in the early 90s, as games weren't often played as they are today. Even though it sold well, EA ultimately ended up losing money in the long run, which is pretty damn sad. System Shock is a first-person role-playing shooter game thing developed by Looking Glass Studios and published by Origin, also known today as EA. The game was released for MS-DOS and ported to Mac and Windows. The game was made right after Origin's last game, Ultima Underworld 2. The digital clients Steam and GOG are selling it for modern operating systems, so they work on pretty much any PC if you were to get it from one of them. Here's the game in a large box. It's a picture of one of the cyborgs in the game. On the bottom of the box, it's got all the system requirements that were needed to run the game. And then on the back, it's got all these neat screenshots, and then it has all the features over here on the side. You can pause it and take a read if you want to. Inside this little bastard, you'll get 9 3.5-inch sized floppy disks. Or if you got the enhanced edition that came out 4 months after the original release date, you'll get a CD in a jewel case with no insert. This is probably the one that you should be playing, considering this one has support for higher resolution textures, and the fact that it has audio logs, which are something that you really need to enjoy this game. Both versions come with a registration card, like always, an advertisement for the strategy guide, a quick reference card with all of the confusing ass controls, an installation guide, and this really cool manual called Terminal Access, and it's actually pretty cool. I normally don't like reading manuals, I just like looking at them because the artwork is cool, but I actually liked reading this one. It's a really cool manual. Set in the year 2072, the story follows as you're some sort of unnamed hacker trying to get into the unauthorized files of the Trioptimal Corporation's research and mining station, called Citadel Space Station. A man named Rdr.Exe catches you minutes after the attempt and sends out troops to arrest you. However, considering how high your hacking skills are, he offers to let you go and on top of that, give you a valuable military-grade neural implant in the price that you successfully hacked the system codenamed Shodan, which is short for Sediment Hyper-Optimized Data Access Network. So you go ahead and do so, hacking Shodan to remove its AI. All is well and you're put to sleep in a machine for about 6 months to receive the implant. By the time you wake up, you find nothing but evil robots and mutated or dead people around the ship. No trace of anyone besides their decayed corpses lying on the floor, with audio logs talking about how something had happened to them while they were alive. What the hell happened to everyone? Why are they mutated or dead? And why is everything here trying to kill you? Well, apparently, Shodan's system went corrupt and went into an infinite loop to where it surpassed human knowledge. And, well, she somehow thinks she's a god. So she's made all of the robots her little bitch, taking her every order and command. She uses them to take out every single trace of human she can, ultimately aiming to take over the earth and live up to her title as a god. Pretty interesting story, honestly. I would really love for them to have made a movie out of this, or its sequel. First things first, the main menu is already terrible, because it only gives you the options to play the intro, start a new game, or load a save game. It's weird enough that they left out the options, but what the hell? What is going on in your head to not include a goddamn exit button on the main menu? You have to start a game to go to any of the options or quit, which is just weird. Oh well. Now the difficulty settings are super cool and make up for the lack of menu shit, because you can customize the difficulty to your preference. You type your name and then select the difficulty on the combat, puzzles, missions, and plot. Pick numbers from 0 to 3, with 0 being a park stroll, and 3 letting yourself get punched in the balls. If you set the mission setting to 3, then you'll have a time limit to finish the game in 7 hours, which is pretty damn hard considering the game is longer than Jonah Falcon's dick. The graphics are pretty decent. I mean, of course right now, it looks like it's something being run on a toaster, but this came out right after id Software's Doom, which blew people away with both the gameplay and its graphics. The engine was made from scratch, though it uses a really similar engine and movement system to the Ultima Underworld games. The controls were a load of camel shit. I installed this on my Windows 98 PC, not even being able to play the game because of how goddamn awful they were. Even with the manual in front of me, I had no clue how the actual hell to properly control the character with the keyboard, and the mouse didn't let me look up or down, so I honestly didn't even play this until they fixed the controls. Click and drag the mouse around the screen, double click on items to pick them up, press E to move forward. Simple, right? Wrong. Just try playing this with the original controls and you'll see for yourself what it is I'm talking about. The Windows port, System Shock Portable, which is now the port that GOG and Steam both sell on their site, fixed the clunky ass controls and gave the game a more standard control scheme. WASD to move, mouse look like most normal FPS games do, press E to switch from mouse look into a point and click type thing, blah blah blah. Even with this new improvement, it still feels a bit clunky to control. While I did get slightly used to the mouse navigation over time, the keyboard controls were still a pile of cluster shit. It made no sense being placed the way they were. It didn't help at all for the fact that you couldn't remap any of the controls. None of it. But it is something that ends up being second nature, given you're patient enough. I gotta give it some credit though, because the physics were way ahead of its time. This game was the first to have actual room above room segments, 3D environments, the ability to look up and down, the ability to jump, lean, crouch, and even go prone. None of this was seen in any game until this came out, and even then it wasn't seen for years. The enemies and weapons are sprites, while the environments are in 3D for the most part. The enemies are pretty varied, though there's a lot, so I'm not going to go into huge detail. But overall, you fight cyborgs, robots, humanoid mutated zombies, and plant things. There's multiple variants of them, each with different sprites, sounds, and attacks. Some of the enemies will respawn, with the type respawning depending on the floor you're on. Usually the mutated human zombies will respawn, and the reactor level the hoppers will respawn. Which is both good and bad because it makes it more of a challenge, but it can be pretty damn annoying at times when you're just trying to get your job done. Shodan might be the single most badass antagonist I've ever seen in the game. The way the creators thought of this was very well done too. It's not someone you're exactly chasing after or running away from, but instead someone that stays far away from you and then threatens you more and more as you approach closer. An enemy that's constantly watching your every move while threatening to kill you as you make certain actions is really clever because it makes the player never really feel safe. The atmosphere is really well done, probably one of the best I've ever seen in the game, period. It's really amazing how a game from goddamn 1994 can make me feel unsettled, especially considering how hard it is for me to actually be creeped out. I mean, yeah, the graphics are pretty shitty by today's standards, but back then, those graphics were almost good as how good Forza Horizon 3's graphics are now. They were damn impressive. It's pretty unsettling when you're walking in the dark, hear some robotic sounds in front of you knowing you're not safe, then to see nothing. You turn around, still nothing. Then you hear Shodan with her voice in all of its iconic glory.
The mounds of humanity, Out of the chaos, they will run and whimper, praying for me to end their tedious anarchy. I am drunk with this vision. God, the title suits me well.
The game does a great job in making you never feel safe, and isolates you from any living human being. I mean literally, there are no NPCs throughout the entire game at all. Just their corpses and some audio logs they left behind. The whole setting of Citadel Space Station is clearly seen to have influenced other games of the sci-fi horror genre, with the Dead Space games in particular. System Shock's gameplay was way ahead of its time. Now this is both a good and a bad thing. Good in the sense that it was unique, satisfying, and strangely addicting, but bad in the sense that it can actually turn a lot of people away because of how goddamn complex the game is. The kills in the game are just so satisfying, and it almost feels like a more complex version of Doom that faces you against robots, evil mutants, an evil computer as an AI instead of demons, more depth in the story, and a slower, more survival horror based pace. The game doesn't hold your hand for bullshit. It literally starts off by telling you a few parts of the inventory, and that's it. Nothing else. You have to find access codes through some of the more well-hidden audio logs. The game gives you very little hand-holding if any, and this can also be a turn-off to a lot of people. Unless you're playing the game on the easiest difficulties for mission and puzzle, then you're gonna have to find passwords to lock doors through hidden audio logs and destroy security cameras, which I'll get to in a bit, in order to gain access to areas that Showdown prevents you from going to. The game gives you almost no indication on what to do, and you're probably gonna have a pretty bad time if you don't listen to the audio logs you find. For example, if you're just wandering through the game, you'll keep going until you reach about level 5 or 6, and then it'll tell you that you need to disable the laser activation. So if you go back, you'll search and you'll probably go back to level 2, to where the laser activation actually is. But when you do this, Showdown thanks you and ends up destroying Earth, which then takes you back to the main menu. But if you keep exploring, you'll probably find in level 3 that the laser override controls over there, which shuts off the laser activation. But you can't use it without placing an isotope in it. So if you don't have the isotope, you're going to go wandering around for a while only to find it being in a room in level 2. So basically, after level 1, you have to go to level 2, get the isotope, go to level 3, place it inside the laser override, then go back to level 2, turn off that bullshit finally, and then you proceed. How do you know all of this? You don't. Through exploration, maybe. Unless you take your time and pace yourself with the game, and read and listen to all of the audio logs that the crew members leave by. Then you will. Trust me, this will save you a major hassle in not knowing what the hell to do, and also on top of it, it adds to the immersion and keeps the game very eerie. This can make the game slower paced though, so if you're one of those people that are looking for a fast-paced shooter and don't play on the easiest difficulties, you're probably not going to have that great of a time. And this is only the first quarter of the game, so you can imagine. Similar to the Vita chambers in Bioshock are the cyborg conversion chambers. This is where Showdown turns you into one of her mutant bitches if you die, and gives you this mortifying view of your brain being taken over as you're then turned into a Cortex Reaver cyborg. However, if you manage to find it and activate the switch next to it before you die, then you get a slightly more badass version of Stephen Hawking's voice thingy saying that the cyborg conversion is now cancelled.
Cyborg conversion cancelled. Standard station restoration procedures online.
You can turn it back on if you want, but I don't know why you would unless you're a complete dumbass.
Cyborg conversion activated. Restoration procedures modified to generate cybernetic assistance for Showdown.
You can respawn there every time you die on that level from then on. Each level you go to, you then have to activate the switch, or else you die like normal and either load a save or have to start the whole game over. If you're assuming that this takes away from the challenge of the game, you're wrong. System Shock is almost always a bullshit hard game, even on the normal settings. Unless, however, you're playing on the easiest with everything set to 0, then you could probably speedrun this game in a few hours. Like most other FPS games of the early 90s, some areas will require you to have found a keycard, though they're usually not too hard to find. The game also has security cameras and computer nodes, which act as the level security. And how that works is, Well, each level has a security level that's lowered as you destroy the security cameras and computer nodes. Usually, the cameras take a small percentage out, while the rooms with the computer nodes take out about 2/3 of the entire security level as you destroy them, making it almost essential to find these rooms and destroy them, as Shodan blocks your access from important rooms if the security is still up in the level. These rooms are usually swarming with cyborgs, so it's best to go in these places with caution. In your HUD, you'll see different things to interact with, like a jetpack, motion booster, headlamp, targeting system, automap, audio log reader, Pong, yeah, you heard me, Pong, and some other shit. Most of these will consume part of your energy, however, which is the bar right underneath your health bar. The game gives you multiple grenades and patches, with two of the more common ones being medical patches and berserk. Medi patches will heal you, of course, and instead of having an instant effect, it slowly heals you over time. So if you're being attacked, it's not going to be much of a help. The berserk screws up your vision entirely, making it into a weird 8-bit color effect thing, which makes it kinda hard to see what you're doing, but not too bad. What it does in return is it makes you super strong with a melee weapon, kinda similar to Doom Guy's berserk, only Doom Guy gets strong as shit and his health goes back up to 100. There's 16 weapons for you to use in System Shock. 16 goddamn weapons, even though you could only hold like 7 at once. My favorite being the laser rapier, which is kinda like the plasma sword from Halo, only older. 4 of the main weapons are also laser weapons that shoot out a big laser blast, with the power depending on which one you get. These don't use actual ammo, but instead will deplete a portion of your energy bar along with the other stuff I mentioned. Certain weapons take certain portions, with of course the stronger ones taking more. There's also 2 melee weapons. One is a piece of shit lead pipe with the only benefit being it doesn't deplete anything, and the other is a laser rapier. The other 10 weapons are standard FPS weapons for the most part. They all fire differently and certain ones have hell of a short and rare ammo count. The one thing that annoyed me with this is in order to reload, instead of pressing a button like normal, you have to drag your mouse over and click the clip at the bottom. It's not a huge problem, but it can be kinda tedious at times, especially when you're in an intense battle. One mechanic I did find really cool was the fact that you have to go and hack into terminals and go into cyberspace to unlock certain doors and collect certain things. Not only is this presented well, but it changes the game entirely from a first-person shooter into a 3D 1980s wireframe type of thing, and it's actually really fun to play. Controls in this mode are pretty clunky too, but you get used to it after a few minutes. The sound really makes half of this entire game. It's equally as important as the visuals. This couldn't fully be enjoyed with the floppy disk release of the game, because it didn't contain any of the audio logs, or any of the voice acting. Shodan's voice alone is enough of a reason for you to want the audio. Speaking of Shodan's voice, the woman who voice acted as her did a perfect job. They added some really neat technical effects that weren't really present in games at the time, to make her voice the way we all know it as. Listen to this. Don't tell me you wouldn't have shit your pants if you were playing this for the first time back in '94.
Cyborg 43S. The current strain of virus is approaching its toxic perfection. We are using human and plant subjects to breathe the virus into tumors. Guard the executive and residential zones on level 6 well, my children. I sense infiltration.
With that being said, the rest of the crew members do a great job with their voice acting. All of them sound like they're in fear or something, or that they're dying.
I must be one of the last ones who hasn't changed. Shodan must have altered the healing machine I installed in Alpha Quadrant. It does things to people now. I think I saw Beth yesterday, but she had so many implants I couldn't be sure. If I can get to the machine, I know I can set things right again.
It just really adds to the isolation feel of the game. I couldn't imagine playing this as a kid. Even though I played games like Doom and Blood, when I was merely in preschool. If the game is just way too graphically old for your taste, then stay tuned because Night Dive Studios, the team that now owns the System Shock license and re-released the first 2 games, are working right now on a remake of it. Yeah, that's right, you little whores. They're making this exact same game, but now with much better graphics and a much needed fix with the HUD and inventory system. The demo for it's been released, set to be finished winter 2017. The game is being funded by Kickstarter, so if you would like to donate any money to help them or technically pre-order it, then you can go to the link in the description. It'll be released for PC, Xbox One, and PS4. So if you donate the amount needed, then you can get the code for your system of choice. When it comes down to the basics, System Shock will shock you in how amazing it actually is. It's got an amazing story, a really dark, immersive cyberpunk atmosphere with amazing voice acting and music, introduced new physics into games like leaning, crouching, and looking, and a really well done presentation. I'm not even saying this out of nostalgia. I picked this game up a few years ago, and I instantly got hooked. It does an amazing job just grabbing you in, while making the gameplay and exploration super satisfying and addicting. It's a very lengthy and unique game that'll keep you occupied for days, or depending on how long you play games, weeks. However, the controls are more horrifying than the atmosphere. The level design can be way too maze-like and tedious, the game is more slow paced for a first-person shooter, and the HUD is way more complex than it needs to be. Also, of course, the graphics haven't aged as well, though I do love them a lot because they have a certain charm to me, but a majority of people watching this that didn't grow up with 90s games seeing this for the first time will think that that alone is a reason not to play it. With that being said, I do not recommend this game to everyone. It seems like it'll throw a lot of people off rather quick, unless you have a heart for older games or grew up with games like this, or it'll better suit someone that's more patient. If you can handle the graphics first and foremost, the slow pace, and give it a chance and some patience without jumping in expecting it to be some fast run and gun shooter thing, then I'd really recommend it and I'd say give it a go. The System Shock series is my second favorite series ever. With that being said, I do recommend at least giving a deeper look into it if you're a fan of the Shock games, at least to see where the series started. To me, I really think it's the best in the entire series, maybe not being as polished as the others, but it has a neat charm that the BioShock games don't have, and the combat is a lot more satisfying in this one than its sequel. So what are you waiting for? Go out and smash some robots, Insect.